Newsmakers on the world's biggest story always choose India today to break their silence. Russia's foreign minister, Sergey Lavrov, he's President Putin's #1 minister, his right-hand man, and in many ways, the person who's been most visible through the extent of the Russian invasion of neighboring Ukraine. And now in a 60-minute interview to India Today's Foreign Affairs editor Geeta Mohan in Moscow, it's an interview that's making international headlines because it's the only interview of its kind. This is a minister who does not give interviews. Sergey Lavrov, speaking exclusively to us, has breathed fire at the West, NATO, and of course the Ukrainian President Zelensky. From accusing the United States of hypocrisy to accusing Ukraine of using civilians as human shields, Lavrov dropped bombshell after bombshell in this world exclusive from Moscow. Here are the top highlights of what he told India Today's Geeta Mohan.
Nearly 60 days of invasion and the Russian war machine is rampaging on. Now the man fronting this war, Putin's foreign minister, Sergey Lavrov, is breathing fire. Speaking exclusively to India Today and mincing no words. Lavrov blamed the West and NATO for pushing Russia to invade Ukraine.
Russia is warning all its colleagues that just on our borders, you have been creating a springboard against us. You have been pumping arms into Ukraine. You have been totally ignoring the legislation of Ukraine, which completely prohibited the Russian language. You have been ignoring legislation which have been encouraging neo-Nazist ideology and practices. Of course, the very latest development, because it was all linked with Ukraine becoming NATO springboard and NATO expansion. And they were saying that Ukraine will be in NATO. Nobody can stop Ukraine if it so wishes. And then President Zelensky said that he might think about coming back to possess nuclear weapons. And in November last year, my president suggested to the United States and to NATO to sit down, to cool off.
Despite warnings and threat about an impending nuclear strike on Ukraine, the Russian foreign minister told India Today that it was in fact Zelensky who first raised the nuke bogey.
Tactical nuclear weapons. Will Russia ever use them, deploy them?
Zelensky, we never mentioned about this. He mentioned this, so his intelligence must have provided him with some news. I cannot comment something which a not very adequate person pronounced.
The Russian foreign minister has denied claims of genocide, calling the Bucha massacre a staged fake news by Ukraine.
We have been targeting only military infrastructure. Unfortunately, the Ukrainian army and so-called nationalist battalions, which are using Nazi insignia, swastika, which was borrowed from Indian history but twisted the wrong way, and the insignias of Waffen-SS battalions. These people were using and continue to use civilians as a human shield. A couple of weeks ago in the place called Bucha, where the Russian troops left on the 30th of March, I think, and for 3 days the city was back in the hands of Ukrainian administration. The mayor of Bucha was publicly saying that we are back, the city is back to the normal life, and only on the 4th day they started showing images of dozens of corpses lying in the street, which was only a few days before shown as being back to normalcy.
With Russia reeling under sanctions, the country's foreign minister accused the West of hypocrisy.
This outcry started only when the Russians decided to protect Russians who are citizens of Ukraine and who were absolutely discriminated. The American military never had any scruples about achieving their military goals, be it in Syria, be it in Iraq, be it in Afghanistan for that matter. And this is a tragedy when people die. But we cannot tolerate the situation when our Western colleagues say that we can do anything we want.
With the war nearing the 2-month mark, Russia has made its intent clear. Sergey Lavrov says the special operation is at a very critical moment.
These republics, the militias of these republics are fighting to get their territory back. Because when they held referendum in 2014, it was held on the entire territories of the former regions. But then the coup leaders started the war, which they called anti-terrorist operation, and they took considerable chunk of both regions. So yes, we recognize them in their declared territories as a result of referendum.
The message from Russia is clear. It's not over yet. With Geeta Mohan in Moscow, Bureau Report, India Today.
Very crucial refrain from the Russian foreign minister is that the second phase of this special operation in Ukraine is all set to begin. He's talked about a referendum in the occupied territories in the eastern part of Ukraine and has basically signaled it's up to the people of Ukraine to see what actually happens next. And remember, this interview comes on a day when Russia has made a big call for Ukraine to lay down its arms once and for all. In this world exclusive to India Today, the Russian foreign minister also declared that his country is launching the second phase, 2.0 of this invasion. He said the focus will now be on eastern Ukraine, which is where India Today has been reporting from, with the ultimate aim being full liberation of Donetsk and Luhansk. Is another big Russian offensive against Ukraine coming. It's been expected for a while, but has the Russian foreign minister now signaled that it's around the corner?
The biggest takeaway of the biggest war interview. After weeks of offensive bombardments and missile strikes, leaving Ukraine in ruins, its key cities on their knees, Kremlin is dramatically changing its strategy. For the very first time, Russia has explained what it intends to do next in its offensive in Ukraine, giving a rare glimpse into its military strategy, often guarded behind a strict Iron Curtain.
And this operation will continue. It is beginning, another stage of this operation is beginning, and I'm sure this will be a very important moment of this entire special operation.
And the news trickling in from India Today's Sergey Lavrov interview does not augur well for Ukraine. Lavrov also announced the beginning of the next stage of the special operation in Ukraine, putting an end to speculations. Russia, for the very first time, also made it clear that it will not return territories captured from Ukraine, even those outside Donbass. Which effectively means that Kharkiv and Sumy in the north, Zaporizhia, Kherson, Mykolaiv and Odessa in the south will be retained by Russia.
Have been appointed now by Russia in Berdyansk and Melitopol, and they're saying that they will hold referendum, that they're not going to go back to Ukraine.
Is
that the plan?
Utmost democracy, right? Referendum.
So we are looking at referendum.
People saying what they want.
While Russia will not return the captured territory, it has decided to hold a referendum in the new regions now under its control. It means bifurcation of Ukraine, which will lose its access to the Sea of Azov and its naval bases. Lavrov also reiterated Russia's stand that Kremlin will focus on the Eastern Front after its strategic decision to move out of Kyiv.
This operation in the east of Ukraine is aimed, as was announced from the very beginning, to fully liberate the Donetsk and Lugansk republics. And this operation will continue. it is beginning, I mean, another stage of this operation is beginning, and I'm sure this will be a very important moment of this entire special operation.
Russia has been negotiating on the future of rebel stronghold of Donetsk and Luhansk to enable it to break away from Ukraine, apart from tightening its control over Crimea. The fall of port city of Mariupol has given Russia the added advantage.
The big takeaway from Sergey Lavrov's interview, not just the fact that Russia is going to ensure the Donbass region, that is Donetsk and Luhansk, remain independent, but also captured territories that are now under Russian control could be looking at a future referendum that they might not ever return to Ukraine. Ukraine is now looking at the possibility of losing more land. In Moscow, Geeta Mohan for India Today.
Captured territories will not go back to Ukraine, and there are a lot of them. And this signals the beginning of the second phase of the quote-unquote special operation in Ukraine. A 60-minute, wide-ranging interview with the Russian foreign minister, his longest perhaps, certainly his first since the entire combat operations and invasion of Ukraine began. Let's discuss this now and debate. Joining us live from Kyiv is Professor Oleksiy Haran. He's a professor of political science at the University of Kyiv Mohila Academy. Also with us live from Moscow is Tatiana Khukhareva, senior journalist, deputy head of Sputnik News. Welcome to the both of you. Thank you for your time. Professor, I'd like to come to you first. You've no doubt heard some, if not all, of what the Russian foreign minister has said. I wanted to get your opening comments, Professor, on the two main highlights of what the Russian foreign minister has said. A, that this marks the second phase of this invasion. He calls it the special operation, and that the captured territories will not be returned. A decision will be made in terms of a referendum, but that territory is not going back to Ukrainian control. Professor.
Namaste. I will start with the second question because
Yes.
it's much easier. Imagine that part of Indian territory is captured by another state and there's a referendum on the future of this territory. How would you assess it? The answer is clear, okay? So every referendum which is held in occupied territories under the barrel of the guns is invalid. My second point regarding the second phase of operation, yes, first phase of operation failed. Russia declared very clearly that they would like to change the regime in Kiev. They were not able to do that. So the first phase was with and ended with the withdrawal of Russian troops from the north. So Kiev is more or less safe right now. So Russia decided to recalibrate its activity, and they need some symbolic victory by May 9th. So that's why they would like to seize Mariupol and also to liberate the whole Donbass. Again, for India, just think about that another country is occupying your territory, and then they are saying that, okay, we would like to liberate the rest of Indian territory. That's all.
Okay, Tatiana.
Just think about it.
Tatiana, would you like to respond to the specific charge? And this has come earlier as well, when the Russian Ministry of Defense had talked about, the fact that it wasn't looking at Kyiv. The Russian foreign minister now telling India today in this big exclusive interview that that the second phase of this operation is about to begin or is already in action right now, is being interpreted widely in Ukraine as a face saver, as damage control, as something that's being announced because phase one was a dramatic failure that didn't go the way Russia wanted it to. Tatiana, to you.
I think that's, that's always subject to interpretation as to what you choose to look at, to see when you look at something. Because, throughout this whole special operation, we've had dozens, if not hundreds of interpretations of what Russia is aiming to do. And the response was always the same. They would say that, look, they want to take, Kiev in 2 days. And I believe I was here, on your programs explaining this. week after week that all of it would have been very nice if that were the case, if we wanted to take, as many cities as possible with no regards to human life loss. It could have been done, it would have been done. The question here, and it is it's a crucial point, that when in the midst of a special operation, obviously no military commander would ever, lay out their concrete plans to the other side. So, whether we choose to speculate on what is being achieved or what has been achieved, it's a matter of perspective. You can say that it's a failure, you can say it's a success. The only real judgment, so to speak, will come at the end of it,
Okay. But what is that end of it is the next question, actually. We did try to ask a couple of follow-up questions about what this second phase, was looking at in terms of an end game, but there was no clarity on that. Professor, what is the end game? You mentioned Mariupol. There has been a sense that, the intensity of combat operations in the eastern part of Ukraine have escalated quite a bit. The city of Mariupol, for all practical purposes, has fallen to Russian control. It seems like what the Russian foreign minister says appears to be true as far as what's happening in the east.
Well, again, look, this is a war. Mariupol is besieged. It's very difficult to keep the city. But again, Russia prevents humanitarian corridors from the city. There are about 100,000 civilians who are there. So yes, there's a battle for Donbass. It's very difficult. It's very tough. But again, as I have said, Russia has already lost, because you can read very easily in the statement of Putin on February 24th, what is the aim of Russia? And the aim was proclaimed to change the regime in Kyiv. And by the way, Lavrov again, so he again,
Jesus, not against the regime change. Aren't you tired of the same story? Aren't you getting tired of it?
Yeah, Professor, go ahead. Yeah. Tatiana, I'll come to you. Let him just finish.
Actually, I don't understand. I always urge you to read what Putin is saying and what Lavrov is saying. And it's very easy. It's very easy. So, and when my Russian counterpart is talking about Russian generals who are sparing civilians' lives, it's so cynical, because you may see easily on videos what Russians are doing. So everybody who has the eyes can see what Russians are doing, what Russians doing in Russian-speaking cities in Kharkiv and Mariupol. And again, I urge you to read what Russians are saying. The aim was to de-Ukrainianize Ukraine. Why are you laughing? Check the story, check the article. It's easy to get it in Russian and even in English. It's all on official Russian state websites.
Let Tatiana answer that specific point, because the issue, Professor, the issue of regime change is something you've mentioned before as well. Tatiana, you were laughing at that. You want to answer that? Then I'll go to the next point.
Yes, of course, I'm laughing, because it's literally the third time, I believe, that we cross paths on your channel, and the same story every single time. The professor is putting words into the mouth of our president and actually, disrespecting me, to say the least, saying that I can't read in Russian. I can read in Russian, I can speak Russian, I am Russian, as opposed to you, actually, Professor. So I understand what Russian language means, but at the same time, reading and interpreting are two very different things. That is very, again, that is funny, because, it's very clear to anybody involved in the media, that's exactly how propaganda gets made. You interpret stuff. And to go from saying that Russia and Ukraine was always the same nation, the same people, to saying that Putin wants to abolish Ukrainian people is quite a stretch.
Okay.
I do believe and I do understand why you're making that stretch, but I hope that you understand why I'm laughing at it.
Okay, I want to come to a crucial point now. I want to discuss as many of the things that the Russian foreign minister have said threadbare instead of getting bogged down in, in just one point, is the very sensitive issue of civilian deaths. This is something we asked the foreign minister about as well, Professor. Here's what he said, in case you haven't heard his specific answer, and then I'll get the both of you to respond. Here's what Minister Lavrov said on civilian deaths and the targeting of civilians, as Russia is accused of.
There is a public organization which is very experienced. They have been discovering the fakes staged by so-called white helmets in Syria, in many other cases, and we will not cease our efforts to establish the truth. We are used to the fact that the United States, United Kingdom, and other Western countries have a very interesting habit. They just throw in a news when they believe this news would work ideologically for their benefit. And then when it comes to facts, and when more and more facts are discovered which put big question mark on their assertion, they just lose interest.
Professor Oleksiy, this is the highest level assertion from the Russian side so far. It's been said by the Ministry of Defense, it's been said by, spokespersons, but this is the foreign minister of Russia repeating that claim that Russia has not targeted civilians and that civilian deaths are because of Ukraine and the Ukrainian military mounting its defenses from civilian areas and using civilian shields. We've done our own reporting on the ground. We've raised the questions on that claim as well, but I'd like to know what you say to that.
No, I think your correspondents on the ground, they're doing a great job, and then demonstrated to the Indian public what Russians did in Kharkiv. The whole city destroyed. In same way in Mariupol. So it's a very cynical lie again. Mr. Lavrov is behaving like Nazi foreign minister Ribbentrop, who was brought to Nuremberg and actually who was hanged out after the end of World War II. I would like also, there's nothing to comment here. Everybody saw the videos of destroyed Russian-speaking cities. Now, and let me come back to what my Russian counterpart said, that I would like to quote in Russian. I know Russian very well. It's my native language. What Putin said. Русские и украинцы – это один народ. Exact translation, Russians and Ukrainians are one people. Have I missed anything, Ms. Khukhareva? Who is lying? Who is lying? Who said that it's necessary to de-Ukrainianize Ukraine in Russian? De-Ukrainizировать Ukraine. It was article in RIA Novosti. So, Ms. Khukhareva, who is lying? I am quoting.
Did the president say that?
Yes, sure.
Did President Putin say
no.
Ukrainian?
The second part was said on state-run official agency, and we know that Russia is dictatorship, and you cannot publish anything on state-run information agency without the permission of Kremlin. And Russians and Ukrainians.
Oh my God, this is such a lie. This is such a preposterous lie. Ridiculous.
Russians and Ukrainians are one people was repeatedly saying by Putin since 2014. How would you translate this phrase? Russians and Ukrainians are one people. Are one people.
Have you studied history?
Explain it.
Have you studied history?
Explain it. What does it mean?
Again, have you studied history ever? Maybe in high school?
Are you PhD to examine me?
Well, apparently somebody has to, because you're saying nonsense. You don't know how media operates. You're claiming that the largest media in the country cannot operate without the say-so of the Kremlin, which is a preposterous lie of an incredible magnitude. It's an opinion section. Literally, you could submit an opinion. Although, we would have to check your credibility, because so far it's not looking good.
Okay,
if you don't know
translate
history.
Russian and Ukrainians are one people. What Putin is saying. Tell me that. Explain it to
Have
Indian
you read the
people.
remaining of the
What does it
article?
mean?
Have you read the remaining of the article? The remains of the article
it's not an article. I am quoting what Putin is saying repeatedly. repeatedly. Explain it to Indian audience. What do you mean?
Tatiana, quick answer, and then I'm going to take it to the next point.
Look, there is no quick answer. The Russia that exists right now didn't start yesterday, and several centuries ago, part of that Russia, that same Russia, it actually was the Kiev Russia. So technically, if we go back to history, the president is absolutely correct in saying that this people is the same people. It just so happened that a part of Western Ukraine at some point decided that they're better than the rest of us, and that they're more European than the rest of Ukraine that speaks Russian.
Okay,
Ukraine,
let's go to the next point.
Let me check. Let me say you one more thing. There's no term Kiev Russia. It's not even in the terminology of Russian historians. It's called Kiev Rus, which is totally different. Yes, there's no term Kiev Russia. No Russian historian
Professor, with your indulgence, you've made your point. I don't want to get into too many details here because our viewers might lose. I get it. Point has been made.
This is how agency works.
I get the point. Your points have been made. Both of you have had a chance to speak on that particular issue. But can we please come back to the question I raised? Tatiana, Professor had his say on that. Could you have your say, which is that on the one hand, the world's been subject to all of these images coming in from all of these places. The latest have come in from Kharkiv and Mariupol. The Russian foreign minister says, we have never targeted civilians. Ukraine says it's a cynical lie.
Of course they do. Of course they do. Because, look, again, you know it as well as I do. You can always see pictures, but you don't, there is no way humanly possible right now, except for, kind of accepting the, the line of the Kiev government to objectively assess who were those injuries and that devastation caused by. That, if any international body wants to conduct an impartial investigation, I do believe that's very possible. With the military experts at hand, they can say which rockets caused which damage, etc., etc. We have thousands of accounts. More than that, it's not just thousands, it's tens of thousands of accounts of people coming out of those cities, of Mariupol and Kharkiv, and especially, with the parts of the Donetsk and Lugansk republics that used to be, in the crosshairs of the fighting or occupied by Kiev forces, who are saying exactly the opposite. They're saying that they were fired at by Kiev, military and paramilitary. The one thing you need to understand is that what we call, the Kiev military is a huge collection of, troops, not just the official troops. It's also paramilitary organizations that were accepted into the kind of the military after the coup. It's also the Georgian National Legion, the head of whom I actually literally sent you part of his interview. He said that, we're not even going to take captives. We're just going to kill every single Russian person we come across.
In fact, the Russian foreign minister, talks about these militias and these paramilitaries, the Azov battalion and others, quite extensively in this interview. I'm coming to the final phase of this discussion, and I want to play out two points that the Russian foreign minister made before I get your points. One of them was on the president of Ukraine, Zelensky himself, and that quote has been, widely, it's gone viral online. And the second is about nuclear warfare, which has also been, a hot topic in this entire conflict. First, let me play out for you, for our viewers, and for both of our guests, what Minister Lavrov said about the Ukrainian president. Listen in.
For the world, Volodymyr Zelensky is the unlikely hero of this war. But for Russia, he is ineloquent, indecisive, and a caricature in camouflage. Speaking exclusively to India today, Russian Foreign Minister Sergey Lavrov was unsparing in his attack on Zelensky.
I cannot intelligently discuss what President Zelensky says because he always changes his mind, diametrically. He was initiator of the negotiations, which we accepted. At some point, we were disappointed because they were changing their mind every time and coming late, leaving early.
Taking a dig at Zelensky's now trendy attire of khaki t-shirt and pants, Lavrov accused the Ukrainian president of allying with the neo-Nazis.
President Zelensky, in his camouflage, was asked about Azov by another journalist, and Zelensky said quietly, well, Azov, they are what they are. We have many groups like this. They are part of our army. For the long 8 years, nobody lifted a finger, nobody bothered, about what was being groomed in Ukraine.
There is more. The Russian foreign minister then called the Ukrainian president ineloquent and a leader who cannot be taken seriously.
We never mentioned about this. He mentioned this, so his intelligence must have provided him with some news. I cannot comment something which a not very adequate person pronounces.
The Russia-Ukraine war is as much a clash of personalities as it is of the military and ideologies. With Geeta Mohan in Moscow, Bureau Report, India Today.
Professor Oleksiy, to you first. A lot of, very personal comments have been made, unsurprisingly, right through the duration of this conflict. You've heard what the Russian foreign minister have said. The words he used for the Ukrainian president have been quoted widely in international media. He said he's ineloquent. I don't know what he's smoking or drinking. He seems to change his mind all the time. He's frustrated. He's been taken for a ride by NATO and the West. How would you react to the words used by the Russian foreign minister for your president, sir?
Well, the Russian foreign minister is not a foreign minister. He's not a diplomat. He's just Nazi-type propagandist, like Goebbels. So, frankly speaking, I wouldn't spread his words, and I would not like to comment it. But let me just come back to what Lavrov was saying and what was repeated by my Russian counterpart here, that these are Ukrainians who are bombarding their cities. Can anybody believe it? So Ukrainians are bombarding Kharkiv and destroyed it. Ukrainians are bombarding Mariupol and destroyed it. Come on, guys, who can believe it?
Okay.
There's famous, if I may, there's famous Russian rock singer, Andrei Makarevich, very famous. So he said that even Hitler propaganda didn't say that Leningrad was bombarded by the Soviets in order to discredit peace-loving Third Reich. This is a type of lies which is incredible. So we Ukrainians bombarded by rockets and missiles our own cities and destroyed them. Come on.
Tatiana, you can respond to both, but please first on the words used by the Russian foreign minister for President Zelensky. He called him ineloquent, don't know what he's smoking and drinking. A lot of intemperate things have been said about politicians on both sides, but your take on that, and you can also respond to what the professor said.
Well, I obviously Minister Lavrov is, he's entitled to opinions, and you can easily understand the frustration on the Russian side, because it is true that President Zelensky changed his mind so many times. He would go on national television and say, look, I want to talk to Putin. Then he would never use the official channels. So there were no request of actual real talks. And then he would say that we want into NATO. A week passes and he says, well, we don't want to go to NATO. The same with EU status, the same with, requesting and not requesting jets from some states. So it is very understandable. He has said so many things and then taken them back in a couple of days or even one day, you know, so to speak. So whatever Foreign Minister Lavrov is calling him, I mean, you know, you can understand that feeling.
Okay.
On the other hand, when it comes to the clash of personalities, I think that, you know, we're always neglecting one very important point, is that President Zelensky is an actor. And the very important thing, the most important thing that he's doing is he's targeting his own people. He's done that quite successfully. He knows how to work crowds. He knows how to work, you know, big crowds. He knows how to work the camera. He's doing that brilliantly. So, you know, instead of doing actual politics and actually saving his countrymen and saving people's lives, which unfortunately he's so far been failing at miserably.
I want to add just one phrase. May I add one phrase? Yes, Zelensky is a comic by actor, by occupation, but Mr. Putin is KGB. Full stop here. KGB, which organized a lot of coup d'etats, political killings, and so on and so forth.
Can you prove that state? Or you're just going to, again, throw accusations without proof?
Is he from KGB, Putin? You will say it's a lie?
No, I'm saying about organizing coups and killings and stuff. What KGB? Exactly are we talking about?
I mean KGB.
Which
KGB
coups?
Organizes coups and political killings. And
Which
by
coups?
the way, there is a neutral Afghanistan which borders India. And who organized coups in Afghanistan? Who killed 3 Afghan presidents? I know their names. I can mention it to you. Daoud, Taraki, and Amin. I know history very, very well. So there was a neutral and peaceful Afghanistan, and the Soviet Union decided to seize it. And we have the war which never ended since that time. Regarding political killings, there were recent examples of chemical attacks, of using chemical weapons in the United Kingdom.
There is no proof of those said attacks. Can we please stick to facts?
Okay. Let's
if you
move to the
love
last
history,
point.
then you know that you cannot just accuse somebody of using chemical weapons without any shred of evidence. And this is exactly what Minister Lavrov was saying about today, is that there is not a shred of evidence.
Okay.
If you want to accuse somebody,
Professor, let me move to the last point.
Union which invaded Afghanistan?
Professor, let me move to the last point. Because otherwise this will become...
Tatiana Khukhareva.
I don't live in the Soviet Union.
Neutral Afghanistan? Who
I
invaded
don't live in the Soviet Union.
Okay.
I don't live in the Soviet Union. We live in Russia. Well, I live in Russia, you don't.
So Russia is a heritage. FSB is KGB.
Ukraine is also a heritage of the Soviet Union.
Mr. Putin said the dissolution of the Soviet Union.
This is a clash of the Zelensky and Putin personalities here. Okay, I hear what the both of you have said. I hear what the both of you have said. You know, one says Zelensky is an actor, the other says Putin's a former KGB. Look, there are many things that can be said which can't be proven, at least on this show, in the context of this show. Let me go to the next point.
Who attacked Ukraine now?
Kiev attacked Ukraine. You attacked Donbass. You attacked...
Which goes back to the beginning of this invasion.
Republics.
Okay. Now, let's not get to the basics of who the aggressors are. I mean, we know what's going on, you know, there are points and counterpoints about the genesis of this entire issue, but that's not what this discussion is about. Let's go to the next point. I want your analysis from the both of you. I respect your views on the last point that I want to raise from this interview. Let me play it out because Professor and Tatiana, nuclear war has been another theme, you know, that has propped up. It's not something we've made up. It's been mentioned by Russian politicians. Minister Lavrov is someone we asked that question to repeatedly in today's interview, but something very interesting happened because in the early days of this conflict, Russia put its nuclear arsenal on a regime of special duty, which basically means operational alert. Multiple times there's been talk of nuclear warfare, how the next war will be nuclear, and Russia will use nuclear weapons if its existence is threatened, always with that caveat. We asked that question to Minister Lavrov, and you'll be surprised at his answer today. Take a listen.
Tactical nuclear weapons. Will Russia ever use them, deploy them?
Zelensky, we never mentioned about this. He mentioned this, so his intelligence must have provided him with some news. I cannot comment something which a not very adequate person pronounces.
As a P5 member, as a nuclear power, will nuclear be an option at all? Is it on the table at all?
When the Soviet Union and the United States in 1987, Gorbachev and Reagan decided that they have special responsibility for peace on this planet, they signed a solemn declaration that there could be no winners in a nuclear war, and therefore nuclear war must never be launched. After the Trump administration came to office, we have been telling them, because the tensions were aggravated, and we said, why don't we try to send a positive political message to the entire universe and to reiterate what Gorbachev and Reagan pronounced. They, during all the 4 years of the administration, they refused to do so. But we were really encouraged when President Biden was inaugurated, 5 days after his inauguration, and we have repeated this offer. He first agreed to extend the START treaty without any preconditions, which the Trump administration was not ready to do. And in June, in June 2021, when they met with President Putin in Geneva, they issued this declaration. On our initiative, this declaration was issued. After the Americans and the Russians said that there must be no nuclear war, don't even think about it, we started to promote the same commitment in the context of the P5. Not the United States, not UK, not France, Russia. And eventually, earlier this year, in January this year, the P5, at the level of the presidents and heads of government, issued the statement which we initiated and which we were pushing through for all these years.
Tatiana, I wanted to ask you about that first. That seemed to be a kind of a bit of a climb down. So far we've heard about nuclear weapons being kept on alert, the possibility that, nuclear warfare will happen if Russia's existence is threatened, and that if, nuclear weapons are ever used, it'll be NATO's fault. Today, there appeared to be a softening of that stance, with Minister Lavrov saying, we're the ones who've always said we cannot use nuclear weapons. It's off the table, practically.
I do believe that, again, you're missing a very important part of all of this narrative, this whole narrative, and that important part is in the beginning. The fact that the nuclear deterrent forces were put on high alert, this is a measure done for defensive reasons, not offense. And this is exactly what Minister Lavrov has reiterated today, is that it's not about offense. Can it be used in defense? It would require a nuclear strike against Russia.
Right.
Obviously. And the message was always the same. Russia was against any sort of, warmongering of kind of warning somebody with, but we were hearing some really aggressive rhetoric coming out of NATO, coming out of the US. If you remember those first weeks, when those reports came out of Moscow, that we did put the nuclear powers on high alert on deterrent as a defensive mechanism, not offense. It was never about offense. If you reread those messages, you will carefully, you will see that. However, again, in the eyes of the international media, whenever in the history of time, Russia says nuclear, it means, nuclear holocaust. This is, this is how mediatization of such issues work. It's very comfortable especially for American media, scaring everybody with big, bad nuclear Russia, which is what they did. In the meantime, there was never any threat of a nuclear strike by Moscow.
Professor,
we were saying, though, that we will defend ourselves against any aggression.
Okay, understood. Professor, your take on this, because the Ukrainian president also a couple of days ago talked about the possibility of a nuclear threat from Russia. You heard what the Russian foreign minister said. What do you think? He says nuclear is off the table. It's only defensive in nature as far as Russia is concerned.
Well, first of all, yes, we heard that Russia may use nuclear weapon in case of the so-called existential threat. And now you need to think, what is existential threat? And now, regarding what Mr. Lavrov said in interview to your channel, I'm quoting from the Russian source again. For Tatiana Khukhareva. На этой стадии мы рассматриваем опцию обычных вооружений. I'm translating into English. At this stage, we consider the option of general weapons. At this stage. So this is published, again, at state-run Russian RIA Novosti. So they use this at this stage, which means that then there could be another stage when we will use nuclear weapons. So that's why definitely, because Ukraine gave up nuclear weapons in exchange for territorial guarantees given by Russia, and Russia violated it again and again.
Okay.
So there are facts. We gave up our nuclear weapons in 1994, and we were attacked by Russia in 2014, and then in February this year. These are the facts.
Okay.
You gave up Soviet nuclear weapons, not your nuclear weapons, Soviet nuclear weapons.
Okay.
Not Ukrainian, Soviet.
We gave up nuclear weapons, and we had the third largest nuclear arsenal in the world.
Not you, the Soviet Union.
And Chinese combined together. We gave it up voluntarily in exchange.
Okay, I'm gonna just jump in here because we're out of time. I'd like to thank both Tatiana and Professor Oleksiy for being with us on this. This was an extended discussion because we wanted to discuss threadbare the highlights of what the Russian foreign minister said in this world exclusive interview. There are many more things that he said which we will be playing out in the days ahead. The big newsmakers always first here on India Today. Professor and Tatiana, always a pleasure. Thank you for your time and for being with me here on News Track. Another mass grave has been found on the outskirts of Ukraine's capital, Kyiv. 300 bodies were found in a single mass site in the town of Bucha, where you've been hearing horrible things have happened. India Today's Abhishek Bhalla was present on location when the mortal remains were being retrieved from this new mass grave. Here's his exclusive ground report.
There are close to 900 bodies that have already been retrieved in the Kyiv region. And there are several mass graves all around. We are at one of those locations where there were mass graves dug, and now those mortal remains have been retrieved, they've been exhumed for future investigations. That we can see this exercise going on behind us, where these mortal remains have been exhumed, and there were 300 bodies that were buried in these mass graves at this particular location. We'll try and understand from somebody who's working closely with these activities. He's one of the volunteer soldiers who's with the Ukrainian forces. What is happening?
Sir, what we see here is that this is a typical example of genocide organized by Putin and his orcs against Ukrainian people. Because you see, what we see here, it's example of treatment to civilians, just grave violation of Geneva Conventions from Russian Russian army towards civil people, because what they did here, they simply went into the Bucha, they approached all men between 18 or even 16 until 60, 65 years old. They arrested people without any facts. For example, if they think like you are a spy or me I'm a spy, like things like that, they simply arrested people. They put handcuffs or simply block their hands with a scotch, and they put them on the ground and shoot in the head. That's it. For a couple of days, approximately 300 people were killed here. So, no, to be precise, 280 bodies were found just at this little location. These people, they were not killed because they do something, but because simply they had Ukrainian passport.
These mortal remains are being exhumed. What is the purpose?
Yeah. What we see here is, you see, there is a team of international investigation is working. We see guys from prosecutor of Office of the Prosecutor of International Criminal Tribunal. Yesterday we saw a press conference of Chief Prosecutor of ICC responsible for Ukraine, and also General Prosecutor of Ukraine, and Bucha is one of separate cases in the future tribunal, and I'm sure that Putin will be on the bench very soon.
Lots of allegations of war crimes against Russia. These mass graves are a very, very serious matter, and Ukraine wants to make sure that this is investigated so that these war crimes can be proven internationally with all evidence. With camera person Lalit Joshi from Bucha, Abhishek Bhalla for India Today.